The influence of any illegal drugs or alcohol.
No, ma'am.
Are you currently on any medication, especially medication that would enhance and enable you to understand the proceedings here today?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And is there any medication that you should have been taken that you did not take today? And it's the state's understanding that you took your medication last night, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That you didn't have it first thing this morning, but that you were administered your medication at 10:55 today, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And it is approximately 7 after 11, is that correct, counsel?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Mr. Hazelwood, how old are you?
20 years old.
And how far did you go in school?
I have my GED.
Are you able to read, write, and understand the English language and understand what I'm saying to you today?
Yes, ma'am.
You are here with your counsel, Mr. Brad Gardner and Emily Gilbert, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Have you gone over the indictment and all of the charges in the indictment, the sentences and potential defenses with them?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you understand that you are charged under this indictment with 2 counts of malice murder, 3 counts of felony murder. Both of those, or all 5 of those charges, carry a potential sentence of life or life without the possibility of parole. Do you understand that you've been charged in counts 6 and 7 with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, each count potentially carrying a sentence of 1 to 20 years in prison? Under count 8, you've been charged with kidnapping, which is potentially 1 to 20 years or life if the victim received bodily injury. Aggravated sexual battery, which shall be punished by imprisonment for life or a split sentence of 25 years followed by life probation. A misdemeanor of sexual battery, financial transaction card theft under count 11, which carries a potential sentence of 1 to 3 years. Count 12 is identity fraud, which carries a potential sentence of 1 to 10 years. Counts 13 and 14 are possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, which carries a potential sentence of 5 years consecutive to any underlying sentence. However, that may be probated, suspended for given time. And then you've been charged with theft by taking a misdemeanor. Do you understand all those charges and the potential sentences you're looking at?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And your attorneys went over all the potential maximums and minimums.
Yes, ma'am.
You have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to these charges, and if you plead not guilty or remain silent, you may receive a jury trial. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the judge and the state has been informed by your lawyers that you are going to enter a plea of guilty but mentally ill to the charges above. Do you understand that the judge is going to make a finding that there is sufficient evidence that you were in fact mentally ill at the time of the commission of these crimes before your guilty but mentally ill plea can be accepted?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, with regard to your 2 attorneys, do you both waive formal reading of the indictment?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you waive any defects with the indictment?
Yes.
Yes.
And Mr. Hazelwood, have you had sufficient time to talk to your attorneys?
Mr. Hazelwood, do you know what that means? You have the right to have the indictment read in its entirety. And what Ms. Domkowski and your attorneys were answering is, do you agree not to have that read at this time? Or you
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Now, you've gone over all the facts and circumstances with them and had sufficient time to tell them about what happened.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Are you satisfied with their counsel and representation?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, this is going to be a negotiated plea. Is that your understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
The state is going to recommend the following. Count 1, life without the possibility of parole. Count 2, life without the possibility of parole consecutive to count 1. Is that your understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to count 5, felony murder, the state will null cross that particular count. But with regard to counts 3, 4, 6, and 7, they will all be vacated by operation of law, even though you're pleading guilty to them, meaning you're not going to be sentenced on them because you're being sentenced on the 2 counts, 1 and 2, to 2 consecutive life without the possibility of parole sentences. Is that your understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
The state will also null cross count 8. With regard to count 9, you will be sentenced to 25 years to serve, followed by probation for life, if applicable, concurrent with count 2 of this indictment. Is that your understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
The state will null cross the misdemeanor to count 10. Count 11 will be 3 years to serve, concurrent with count 1. Count 12 will be 10 years to serve, concurrent with count 1. Count 13 will be 5 years suspended, consecutive to count 2. Count 14, 5 years suspended, consecutive to count 13. And count 15, the misdemeanor in the state will also null pros. Is that your understanding, Mr. Hazelwood?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, and just for the record, we've explained to Mr. Hazelwood that null pros basically means a dismissal.
Did you explain what vacated means as well?
No, we didn't explain what vacated means. We explained it as it simply is he's not going to be punished for those counts.
Do you understand that, Mr. Hazelwood?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, do you understand that if the court sentences you to more than what has been negotiated with the state, that you would have the right to rescind this agreement or not go forward? Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, there's some very, very important rights that I need to go over with you right now. All right? And that is, you have the right to a trial by jury. You have the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself. But you also have the right, if you choose, to take the stand and testify on your own behalf, and no one can keep you from doing that. Do you understand those important rights?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You also have the right to subpoena witnesses to come to court and bring evidence in your favor, and you have the right to confront the witnesses who testify against you. You have the right to the assistance of counsel, either hired by you or court appointed if you cannot afford counsel. You have the right to the presumption of innocence, the right to have the charges against you proven by the state beyond a reasonable doubt, and the right to appeal if you were found guilty at trial, and the right to have attorneys assist you with any appeal. Do you understand that by pleading guilty today, you're giving up all of those really important rights I just read to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you understand that when you plead guilty, you waive all defenses by entering the guilty plea, including any mental health and or insanity defenses? Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Counsel, have you gone over the defenses with your client? Potential defenses?
We have, and for the record, over a several-month period, we've gone over the discovery with Mr. Hazelwood, we've watched video statements with him, and we've talked about the various defenses that may be available and how they may impact his case.
And have you found that he understands the defenses, the availability or unavailability of those defenses, and is freely and voluntarily going forward with this plea?
Yes, he's asked several questions, and we've talked about it at length, and his responses led me to believe that he understood.
For the record, I'm also satisfied that my client understands the current posture of this case and his decisions moving forward.
And for the record, the court has also had those conversations with Mr. Hazelwood and is confident that he understands what is happening today, as well as what potential defenses could or could not be.
At this time, Mr. Hazelwood, I must inform you of some other very important rights that may affect you. First off, if you are not a United States citizen, a guilty plea will affect your immigration status, no matter what anyone has told you. That this plea could in the future be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction or other jurisdictions, including federal court. That you have only a limited right to appeal these negotiated sentences, and you only have 4 years from today's date to file any habeas petition, which means you're challenging whether you did this voluntarily or not. Do you understand you're also giving up those rights?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And by pleading guilty, it can also affect and impact your life in other ways that may or may not be applicable here, but that could affect your ability to get a job, vote, hold office, things along those lines. You understand that pleading guilty has other implications.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. With regard to count 1 and 2 of indictment 16 SC 147336, how do you plead?
Guilty but mentally ill.
With regard to counts 3, 4, 6, and 7, how do you plead?
Guilty but mentally ill.
How do you plead to count 9, aggravated sexual battery?
Guilty but mentally ill.
How do you plead guilty to counts 11 and 12?
Guilty but mentally ill.
And how do you plead to counts 13 and 14?
Guilty but mentally ill.
Mr. Hazelwood, has anyone forced or threatened you to enter this guilty plea here today?
No, ma'am.
Has anyone promised you anything in order to get you to plead guilty today?
No, ma'am.
Have you entered this guilty plea freely and voluntarily of your own free will?
Yes, ma'am.
And with regard to the indictment, did you sign that indictment and enter your guilty but mentally ill plea?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And is your guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with full knowledge of all the charges against you, potential sentencing, and all defenses?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you the plea of guilty form. Did you go over this with your attorneys?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And in fact, did you initial each and every page?
Yes, ma'am.
And with regard specifically to page 4 of this, with your rights, did you initial by each one of these rights that you're waiving by pleading guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
And on page 5, is that your signature there?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, the state will tender in the plea of guilty form.
And I have the indictment.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, if this case were to go to trial, the state would anticipate that this is the following evidence that would be proven at trial. On August 1st, 2016, at approximately 3:34 in the morning, and this is based upon the time a witness heard gunshots as well as the surveillance video, 20-year-old Jeffrey Hazelwood, who is before you now, shot 17-year-old Carter Davis and 17-year-old Natalie Henderson, both in the head, behind the Publix shopping center located at 855 Woodstock Road in Roswell, here in Fulton County. The timeline per the video that was obtained by the Roswell Police Department showed that surveillance cameras were mounted at various points around the shopping center, and they revealed that Natalie Henderson and Carter Davis arrived back at that area in their respective vehicles. They both showed up in different cars, and they arrived around 3:14 in the morning.
If you want to sit down. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. At approximately 3:15, the surveillance cameras then capture Mr. Hazelwood walking towards the area of the homicide. Then at 3:36 in the morning, the cameras capture Mr. Hazelwood fleeing the area on foot. Within an hour thereafter, those same surveillance cameras, an hour thereafter, a surveillance camera at the Flash Foods gas station located at Highway 92 and Trickham Road in Woodstock captured Mr. Hazelwood donning a white mask, a Guy Fawkes mask, Guy, G-U-Y, Fawkes, F-A-U-L-K-S. And at that time, he then used Ms. Natalie Henderson's debit card to purchase gas. At approximately 4:34 hours, the Publix shopping center cameras where the homicide took place captured Mr. Hazelwood donning that same white Guy Fawkes mask and returning to the scene, walking to the area of the homicide. Now, the homicide itself was not captured on videotape. These are surveillance cameras that captured him going and coming. At 4:41 hours, the cameras then capture Mr. Hazelwood briskly walking away from the area of the homicide. At 5:53 that morning, a delivery truck driver then discovered Ms. Henderson and Mr. Davis's bodies lying on the ground next to Ms. Henderson's car, and he then called 911. The Roswell Police Department responded to the scene. The crime scene technicians found no shell casings, but they did find a single projectile near Mr. Davis's body. Mr. Carter Davis was lying on his back. He was clothed only in black athletic shorts, and Ms. Henderson was found completely naked, lying on her back with her legs spread open, which was obviously positioned after her death, in the opinion of the crime scene technicians. The investigation was then led by Roswell detective Jennifer Bennett, who was able to identify Hazelwood as a suspect after observing his distinctive Honda Passport on the surveillance video at the gas station. What the police did was they did an outstanding job trying to gather information. What they did was they found all of these different cars that could match this and narrowed it down and then located this car. They noted that Mr. Hazelwood's passport had damage to the rear fender and 2 tires were definitely darker. They analyzed a list of people in both Fulton and Cherokee County areas that owned Honda Passports for that particular make and model year. They found that Mr. Hazelwood's grandfather owned such a vehicle, and after seeing the vehicle on Mr. Hazelwood's Facebook page, They noticed it displayed the same distinctive damage to the passenger side rear fender, just as the passport from that gas station surveillance video. The police then matched defendant Hazelwood's cell phone number, which was listed on his Facebook page, with cell phones that had hit off of towers at the time of the homicide, and found that Mr. Hazelwood was actually in the area at that time. He also physically matched the description of the man that appeared on both the Publix and the gas station surveillance videos. So on August 3rd, 2016, 2 days after the murders, the detectives followed Mr. Hazelwood as he departed his girlfriend's Roswell home in his Honda Passport. They next observed him stop at a nearby QT gas station at Mabry Road and Georgia 92, where he exited the vehicle, paced around, took off his red shirt. At that point in time, they detained him and transported him to the Roswell Police Department. In plain view, through the window of his vehicle, was in fact that Guy Fawkes mask that Mr. Hazelwood wore both at the Flash Foods gas station and when he returned to the murder scene. It was then taken into evidence when they searched his vehicle. Detective Bennett Mirandized and interviewed him that day, August 3rd, 2016. At first, he admitted to being present at the homicide and stealing Natalie Henderson's debit card. He denied committing the homicide and alleged merely that he saw their bodies fall to the ground, having been shot by some unknown assailant. He then asked for an attorney that evening. However, that evening, he did have a phone conversation with his grandparents, who urged him to step up and do the right thing and tell the police what really happened. He then reinitiated contact with Detective Bennett the next morning. She re-Mirandized him, and he then fully confessed. However, during his confession, when he described what happened, he's kind of couched it in terms of someone else was ordering him to do these things. There was some unknown person there. However, what he stated at that time on August 4th, 2016, was that he saw the victims, Carter Davis, Natalie Henderson, drive behind the shopping center, which piqued his interest. He became curious and he followed them over there. He then watched them for a while from afar, at which point in time he approached the driver's side door of Miss Henderson's car and observed the two young people, who were 17 at the time, engaged in a romantic interlude inside the car. And he then opened the car door. Mr. Carter Davis became aggressive, stepped out of the car. He was very angry with Mr. Hazelwood, of course, for interrupting them and to protect Miss Natalie Henderson. He became aggressive with the defendant. The defendant then stated he pistol whipped Mr. Carter Davis and then shot him in the head on the left side. He then ordered Miss Henderson out of the car, had her moved to the side of the car, at which time he forced her to remove her underwear and he digitally penetrated her. He took her to the front hood of the car and ordered her to bend over the side of the vehicle, at which point he spanked her with his hand and then stated that he touched her all over. He did not say that he raped her. However, he did claim he touched her all over. He then shot her in the head and then positioned her body. He then went through her purse and stole her credit card. During this, of course, he claimed that a third party known only to him as Matt was with him that night and coerced him to commit the homicides, but as the court knows, coercion is not a defense to murder. And the state found absolutely no evidence of a third person there, not on the video surveillance, not on the gas station video, and so there's no evidence at all that another person was there. Detectives obtained search warrants to search the passport, Mr. Hazelwood's grandparents' home, and his girlfriend's home. Inside his vehicle, they did find the Guy Fawkes mask that he donned when he had stolen Natalie Henderson's debit card, and when he returned to the crime scene, the DNA on that mask came back to Mr. Hazelwood. They also found the gas can that appeared to be the same gas can in which Hazelwood deposited fuel when he was using Miss Henderson's debit card. They found a Sig Sauer 9mm pistol in the car. This belonged to Mr. Hazelwood's grandfather, and in fact came back as the murder weapon. There was in fact contact DNA, not blood, but contact DNA on the gun that came back to Natalie Henderson. Inside Mr. Hazelwood's home, they also found a journal with some writings in it. The forensic evidence in this case would be that the firearms had 3 cartridge cases. The metal jacket and the metal jacketed bullet from the scene all came from the gun in the defendant's vehicle, and the 9mm metal jacket that was recovered from Natalie Henderson's head during autopsy came from the gun in the defendant's vehicle. There were no fingerprints of value found on the magazines in the defendant's vehicle. There was no blood on the gun, but as I mentioned, there was contact DNA on the gun that came back to Miss Henderson. There was a sexual assault kit performed on the defendant. Of course, this was 3 days later, but it was negative for either victim's DNA. Both victims were shot in the head, and that was the cause of death. And that happened here in Fulton County, Your Honor, and that would be the factual basis if we were to go to trial.
Mr. Hazelwood, do you understand the nature of the charges against you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you now under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or other medication besides the medication you take for your mental health?
No, Your Honor.
What medications are you currently taking?
Zyprexa,
I'm sorry?
Zyprexa,
Okay, anything else?
Benadryl, and Cogentin.
And Cogentin?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do those medications help you understand what's going on?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you understanding what's going on here this morning?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you feel like you are ready to go forward with this?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you need any additional time to talk to your attorneys?
No, ma'am.
How far did you go in school?
GED.
You understand that you've been charged with 2 counts of murder, 3 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count of aggravated sexual battery, financial transaction card theft, identity fraud, 2 counts of possession of a firearm during commission of a felony, and 1 count of theft by taking a misdemeanor. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Has anyone made any threat or promise to influence you to plead guilty but mentally ill?
No, ma'am.
Do you understand that by entering this plea, you're giving up the following rights: the right to a jury trial, the right to be represented by counsel at that jury trial, the right not to incriminate yourself, the right to question those that have accused you, the right to subpoena witnesses on your own behalf, the right to testify on your own behalf, and the right to appeal your case to a higher court and be represented by counsel if a jury were to convict you. Do you understand that by entering this plea, you give up all of those rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have any questions about those rights?
No, ma'am.
Do you understand if you were not a U.S. citizen, a plea of guilty to these charges would impact your ability to stay here in the United States?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that the court's not bound by any promises, recommendations, reductions, or any other negotiations, and I could sentence you as I deem appropriate this morning?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you had sufficient time to talk to your attorneys?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you need any additional time to talk to them?
No, ma'am.
How do you plead to the charges?
Guilty but mentally ill.
Are you in fact guilty but mentally ill?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is your plea made freely and voluntarily?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Gardner, Ms. Gilbert, are you satisfied that your client is competent, understands what's going on, that the plea is voluntary, and that there is a sufficient factual basis for entering the plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you had ample time to talk to your client about all of the evidence in the case, all of the potential sentences in the case, all of the potential defenses in the case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Judge.
Are you both confident that he understands what's going on here today and that he understands the ramifications or consequences of what's going on today?
Yes, Your Honor.
I am, Judge.
I saw Mr. Hazelwood in February here in court, and it was apparent to the court and representations from counsel that he was not being properly medicated. Have you noticed a difference in the last 3 months since he's been at Central State under the care of Dr. Hildreth?
Yes, Your Honor. He's tremendously better than he was back in February.
I agree, Judge. He's markedly better than he was. He was clearly not receiving adequate treatment in Fulton County.
Is he remarkably better to the point that you agree with the doctors that he understands what's going on here today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Judge.
Mr. Hazelwood, is there anything else you want to ask me
No, Your Honor.
before I accept the plea? All right. Based on all of the medical records, which I have reviewed in their entirety, as well as the evidence presented at the competency hearing 2 weeks ago, as well as my interactions with Mr. Hazelwood on numerous occasions in this courtroom, my discussions with him, watching him, my observations of him, I do find by a preponderance of the evidence, and actually by more than a preponderance of the evidence in this particular case, that Mr. Hazelwood does fit the guilty or mentally ill category. So I will find that there's a sufficient factual basis for entering the plea. I further find the plea of guilty to be knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently entered, and I will accept the guilty but mentally ill plea based on the entirety of all of the records in this case, representations of counsel, representations by the district attorney's office, as well as the testimony and evidence and my own personal interactions and observations of the defendant.
Your Honor, there was a plea of guilty form that was executed by Mr. Hazelwood, and we would ask that that be made a part of the record. I don't know the court's policy, but just officially moving it into the record.
It will be made a part of the record.
And one other thing, Your Honor, it is a part of that plea of guilty form with respect to the 4-year habeas requirement, but we did speak to Mr. Hazelwood about that he has 4 years from today's date if he were to want to challenge these proceedings.
Okay, Mr. Hazelwood, I know that your attorneys and Ms. Domkowski, the assistant district attorney, have spoken to you about this, but you probably don't know what habeas corpus means, do you?
No, Your Honor.
That's all right. I'm not sure most attorneys know what the words mean, all right? So let me explain the question that you understand it. You have rights that you've been told about to challenge this plea, but the habeas corpus right is sort of different. Because what that means is when everything's final, when you still have 4 years to challenge, that doesn't mean that it's granted, but you can challenge if you wanted me accepting this plea because there's some error in the proceedings. And then somebody would have to decide, some judge would have to decide, have a hearing and decide whether there's any errors in the proceeding. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would like to present the victim witness impact statements. For the record, the state has received a number of letters and the state has copies. We present that to the court. Thank you, Your Honor.
And we have no objection for those records being admitted.
Okay. Thank you. And at this time, Your Honor, we would like to present the Henderson family first.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Henderson, and I'm Natalie's mom, or Mama, as she used to call me. Standing with me is Tad Henderson, her daddy, and Rachel Henderson, her little sister. No matter what I say today, it won't be enough to express the wonderful and sweet person Natalie was, the impact she had on the lives she touched, and the unimaginable pain and anguish our family and friends have endured since the moment we found out she was taken from us on August 1st, 2016. Natalie was a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a niece, a granddaughter, and a best friend. She loved to sing and play the guitar and write poetry. She was creative and had an old soul. She loved animals and volunteered countless hours for companion animal connection. Natalie wanted to become an architect. But more than anything, she wanted to make this world a better place for everyone, one day at a time. Natalie was the girl who didn't understand cliques in school and invited the person sitting alone to join her at lunch. She pulled you in with her big personality, made you laugh, and made you feel loved. Natalie had a favorite way of communicating love and friendship without words. She felt a hug could convey what couldn't be expressed verbally. These were always heartfelt, and she let us know she looked forward to giving us lasting hugs. None of us will ever be able to feel the warmth and tenderness of her welcoming embrace again in our lifetime. Now her family and friends can only cherish the memory of the times she wrapped her arms around us, physically feeling her love and friendship. Natalie was only 17 years old and had so much more to give and experience in her life. She will never graduate from high school. She will never experience college. She will never get to fulfill her dream of becoming an architect. Natalie will never experience the incredible joy and love of having children of her own. She will never get the chance to change the world for the better. As her family, we will never again hear her beautiful singing or hear her playing her guitar around the house. We'll never be able to hear her infectious belly laugh or hug her tightly just as she did with us. Her daddy will never be able to give away her hand in marriage. No more opportunities to tell her how much we love her. No more trips as a family with her. Everything has changed. The next part I'm going to read on behalf of Rachel, her sister. Natalie was not only my big sister, but my best friend. We laughed together until we cried, and we cried together until we laughed. She was there for me no matter what. When I felt like my world was crumbling, she was my rock. The feeling that she can no longer be here for me, or me for her, is beyond devastating. We planned our future together. We would always live near each other, and our children would be best friends, just like we are with our cousins. We were inseparable. I followed in her footsteps in whatever she did, whether it was the activities she participated in, or who I was friends with, or how I carried myself day to day. I modeled myself after her, and I will continue to for the rest of my life. A piece of our hearts will forever be gone without Natalie, and we will never get that piece back. Our family is beyond devastated and heartbroken. So many future memories are gone forever. One of the last things that Natalie wrote in her journal was this. She wrote, "Love is our strongest weakness, yet it gives us our strength." We will do our best to remember her words as we continue to try to heal from this horrific tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the Davis family.
I am Carter James Davis's mother, Michelle, and this is Jeremy. And we are so very proud of the young man our son had become. Today I stand here giving a victim's impact statement, but as I tried to write this night after night, I could not find the words to qualify what losing a child and the impact of it is. I decided to write down the questions swirling, and maybe you can feel a small piece of the impact of losing our son. How can I explain the impact of seeing the joy of my son on the day of his senior pictures just 4 days before his murder? How can I explain Carter's love of family and what it would be like to have it gone? Surrounded by family and friends, Carter's sweet smile and strong physique was captured under blue skies and ponderosa pines. I carried the photographer's foil to add light to the shots, and we joked and laughed. Carter looked so handsome. My dad wore his Letterman jacket. Sky, Carter's best friend, jumped in for a couple photos, and his love of family and the Black Hills was so evident. How can I explain the impact of coming home from South Dakota, seeing Carter's happiness of talking with his dad only to be gone the very next morning? How can I say what the impact is not to have his smile, his giant hugs, and his spirit of adventure gone, absent forever? I think of our precious kids who are unarmed and unaware of the evil watching, then murdered, and yet 3 days earlier, on Carter's 17th birthday, July 29th, we were celebrating his life. Carter loved mountain biking, hiking, snowboarding, lacrosse, cliff jumping, you name it. If it had adrenaline, Carter was up for it. Yet he also loved trying new restaurants, exploring little towns, eager to be together. Equally, Carter loved holidays, birthdays, and always putting on his new clothes immediately, trying out every new gadget, and had to play with his younger cousin's toys, the ever and always kid. How can I tell you of the impact on our life of not having this gift, this incredible energy who was always all in, gone and absent forever? I think of Carter's lacrosse teams. He was scouted heavily and was highlighted on a national site for a lacrosse player to look out for. How can I explain the impact of watching lacrosse without our number 4 on the field? I think of Carter's academics. He was gifted in math and science, but also was articulate. He planned on studying engineering, researching specialties like aeronautical engineering, biomedical, and even structural. What could he have become? What impact would he have made? How can I give words to the impact of losing a talented and smart young man, one who cared about our world and how we treat it? I think to Carter's great humble gift of caring for those that were picked on, had trouble in school, or was left out. He stood up to his friends and aggressors, never backing down but protecting, helping others treated unfairly. He helped kids do homework, make friends, and feel included. How can I say the impact that losing this voice, this kind of good and kind character, is on our world? I can't. For Carter's friends and our family, he loved everyone who they were and how they needed it. Carter didn't judge, and he hated drama. He was honest to a fault at times, but loved greatly. You always knew where you stood with Carter, as he told you directly. Huge bear hugs 3 times a day. I love you was something he said so often and truly meant it. How can I say the impact on Carter's sister, Greta, age 9, and cousin Sky? Carter was their everything. They no longer have a brother and soulmate, no longer have a future uncle for their kids, and they will forever have a hole that no one can fill. I can say this impact because it is real. I see it in their eyes. I feel the absence. I know the pain. Carter and Natalie were not supposed to leave this earth on August 1st. I know Carter tried to protect Natalie, but the gun was an unfair advantage. How can I say the impact of such bravery, facing a loaded gun with nothing but faith in God and a desire to protect? And the impact on my husband's Jeremy's life. Jeremy lost his best friend. They laughed and played lacrosse for hours, fly fished together, discussed politics and sports, life, and the importance of being a gentleman. And they truly brought out the absolute best in one another. How can I say the impact losing is on my husband? There are no words. And the impact on me. God has gifted me a new pair of eyes since the day darkness fell. I see the world with Technicolor. Evil touched our life, but quickly God's light and love within our community, my school, our friends, and family showered onto the darkness. I stand here with new eyes, and I'm thankful for the police, the lawyers, the detectives, our judge, and the new friends we've gained out of this unbelievable heartbreak. I see this light and will tell of it. Carter left an impact in 17 years many don't make in 70, and I am grateful. But please don't get me wrong, I want him back. I ache to hear Carter's voice, to hold his hand. I long to see his high school and college graduation, his wedding, his children, and to be there for long talks about life. The impact is forever. What was done to these children of ours is something we will deal with every day of our life. We will wake each day with sadness, and we have to live this way until we die. But the wonderful realization is that Carter James was our son. He was a special young man, one who made friends easily and had a passion for sports, faith, the outdoors, his family, and adding more love to the world. We will live out his wish and ask God to continue to lift us. And on one beautiful day, we will meet again.
The state asks that you accept the negotiated plea, Your Honor.
Mr. Hazelwood, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, Your Honor.
Before I impose sentence, I need to make some observations for both the Davis and the Henderson family. The Henderson family, in reviewing all of these letters, should take up a career in writing. They are poignant, they're well-written, they are insightful, they're sad. I've been doing this a long time. For those of you who don't know, I've been in a courtroom like this most of my entire career. I can count on less than 2 or 3 fingers the number of cases that have impacted me as this one has. And I don't say that because y'all are sitting here. I say that because it's from my heart across the board. The poise, the composure of both the Henderson and Davis family is amazing. Miss Henderson, you said Natalie would never change the world. She already has. This case will have a lasting impact on many, many different issues and causes. It may not have been the way she wanted to impact the world or the way that y'all thought she would impact the world, but she has. And she's impacted every person that's been in this courtroom from the very first day that I handled this case. And she will continue to impact the world. I truly wish from the bottom of my heart it was in a different way. But she has. To the Davis family, you indicated you found some light. Carter will continue to bring light. And just like Natalie has made a lasting impact on the folks in this courtroom, obviously on y'all's lives, but also on sometimes a failing system. And they will remain the inspiration, at least to this single judge, to do what she can to make sure that these things don't happen in the future. I can't fix it. I can't pretend to understand it. And I can't imagine what all of you all are going through. And you have my sincere, sincere prayers and condolences. Mr. Hazelwood, you've had some challenges, significant ones. That doesn't change what's happened or the terrible impact that your actions have caused the family. With that said, you should be commended for taking responsibility and not putting folks through more and more of these proceedings. All right. Count 1 will be life without the possibility of parole. Count 2, life without the possibility of parole consecutive to count 1. Counts 3 through 7 will be vacated by operation of law. Count 8 will be null prost. Count 9 will be 25 years to serve, followed by probation for life concurrent with count 2. Count 10 will be null prost. Count 11 will be 3 years to serve, concurrent with count 1. Count 12 will be 10 years to serve, concurrent with count 1. Count 13 will be 5 years suspended, consecutive to count 2. Count 14 will be 5 years suspended, consecutive to count 13. Count 15 will be null prost.
believe the state also null-crossed count 5, which would have been vacated by operation of law, but because it was based on count 8.
Kidnapping?
Kidnapping, yes.
I'm sorry, the count of already all passed. Anything else, Mr. Garner?
Yes, Your Honor, we would just like to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the Davis and the Henderson family. And we are so sorry that they've had to endure such pain and suffering based upon Mr. Hazelwood's actions. We've spoken to him several times, and he's written several drafts about apologies that he wanted to give to the families, and he felt that he couldn't get through it without crying again, so he has asked us not to make a statement, but we would just like them to know that he is remorseful for his actions. We're so sorry for the pain that they're suffering.
I just want the record to reflect that that was guilty, but now guilt.
Yes, Your Honor.
I accepted it that way, but I want to make sure the sentence reflects that as well.
Yes, Your Honor.
Good luck, Mr. Hazelwood.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is there anything else, Your Honor?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Listen, if I get transferred with a